Hello again, welcome to the third episode of this series where you'll be learning about if statements, what they are and why and how you use them. After this video, you should be able to create some basic code that has enough complexity to be called code. In essence, if statements are a tool in programming that checks a condition and executes code if its condition evaluates it true. For example, if our condition was 1 equals 1, obviously this is true and the code inside of this if statement will run. Although checking that numbers equal themselves is kind of redundant, we can check other conditionals, like for example, if we had a variable that held the value for the weather today, and we had a whole block of if statements telling us what clothes we need to wear based on the weather. Now, if statements are actually accurately called if-then statements, but colloquially it's just shortened to if statements for convenience of speech. However, the name if-then reflects the syntax of the statement. To use if statements, the syntax is if conditional then code. It's as simple as that. You may see some programmers like to put parentheses around their conditionals, which is fine too, it's just a preference. So let's make a really simple example with basic arithmetic. Let's say Justin Bieber forgot how to do simple addition and wanted to see if he had more fans than Michael Jackson. To do this, we simply have to compare the number of Justin's fans to the number of Michael's fans within us the if statement as the conditional. To start, we'll make two variables, which we'll name J fans and M fans, and assign very random numbers to each, obviously. Now to compare them, a single if statement should do the trick. Using the syntax, we need to type if jfans greater than sign mfans, then. So if our conditional evaluates it true, that is, if Justin has more fans than Michael, the code included in the if statement will run. Now we don't exactly have anything inside the if statement, so let's add a print statement to give Justin an indicator that he has more fans. Also, you may have noticed that Studio automatically gives us an end here for some reason, and that just indicates the end of that part of code. That is the if statement in our case. You'll have many ends in your code, but don't worry, it just indicates to the script that you're closing a specific block of code. But let's say that Justin has less fans than Michael. An average human would assume that as nothing printed out, Michael has more fans than Justin. However, since we're dealing with Justin Bieber here, we need to create another check to see if Justin doesn't have more fans than Michael and print that out clearly for him to see. Now creating another if statement is kinda annoying, because then if we wanted to check more than just 2 things, say 20 things, we would need 20 if statements. Instead, we use what is known as an else and elseif statement. So you can probably guess what each is by their names, but an else statement runs if the if statement evaluates to false. Let's add it in now to see the syntax a little better. Under this line, all we have to do is write else and press enter, then write what we want to execute if Michael has more fans. As there is only one other possibility, that is Michael having more fans, for now we'll just add another print statement to indicate this. But we've forgotten something. In the case that they both have the same amount of fans, as unlikely as that sounds, our code will break. But now we have 3 different cases, and our else will only account for 1 case. We also don't want to create another if statement because we are certainly very efficient. So what should we do? Else if statements are the answer to this predicament. Else if statements have the same logic as if statements, but they run inside of an if statement. So if the first statement evaluates to false, it goes to the else if statement to check its conditional. If this is true, it will run. You can have as many else if statements as you want. Also, if for example we use another if statement instead of an else if statement, it would first run through the first if statement, and regardless of whether it's true or false, the second if statement will run. However, in else if statements, it will only run if the if statement evaluates to false. Now let's implement this into our current code, modifying the else statement slightly. So you can see we've changed the code under the else statement to show the case of them having the same amount of fans, and our else if statement now shows if Michael has more fans than Justin. This is just a personal preference of order, but you could have had it the other way around, as there are only 3 cases. But that should finish the code, and now Justin can see that he makes absolutely repulsive songs and no one likes him. Anyway, that wraps up this video too, and this time I've got a task for you. I want you to create a program that checks the mark the student receives as a percentage and assigns them a grade of A, B, C, D, or E based on these percentages that are separated by value of 12.5%. Obviously this is optional and you only really need to do it if you think you're struggling slightly on if statements. Also, you can leave in the comments the questions of this video and I'll do my best to answer them all. Anyway, I've grinded CSGO for like 14 hours today, so I think it's safe to say it's bedtime. Good night.